Same here, because when I hear clips like that, and I just think about the
Mm,
experiences my friends have that
mm-hmm,
differs depending on which side of the Mason-Dixon
mm-hmm,
line they're on, which side of,
mm-hmm.
a border connecting to a state like Texas they're on.
That's
It is
right.
really scary for me because that Dobbs decision, which undid Roe versus Wade, is still wreaking havoc. Talk with us
Mm-hmm,
about the abortion-related ballot measures, a very powerful tool of democracy that I wish more of
mm-hmm,
us were familiar with. Talk to us about
mm-hmm.
how these post Dobbs abortion related ballot measures are responding to the crises that were unleashed by that decision.
Well, it's the stories like that clip that you just shared is why ballot measures or direct democracy has to exist. And let's be honest, it's not in all 50 states, right? Plus DC. Well, it is in DC, but and that's work that we still have to do, but it is this powerful tool that gives us the agency to make decisions for our communities. And that has been so true across the country after the 2022 Supreme Court decision with Dobbs. That year there were three abortion bans on the ballot
Wow.
and three what we would say reproductive freedom ballot measures. All the abortion bans lost and all the reproductive freedom ballot measures won.
Wow.
And that's just a great, and this is like the bans where we lost were Kansas, which was like within a month after that Supreme Court decision, right?
Hmm.
States like Kentucky and Montana that all rejected these abortion bans. So I think that's something for us to all remember. I'm thinking about that clip where she talked about, they clearly haven't just, they're only talking to people within their own isolated community. But what we've seen through these abortion related ballot measures, it's Republicans, it's Democrats, it's independents, it's people of faith, it's people
Huh.
from all walks of life that are saying yes to this critical health care that we need. Because I think so many people don't realize what is entailed
Yeah.
when you think about reproductive health care. And the reality is, many people who can get pregnant don't often know that they're pregnant. And so then they're going to seek, medical care. And it's just why we need this tool across the country.
That's for people who are less familiar with ballot initiatives. We have
Mm-hmm.
sometimes far too many of them in New York City. It depends
Mm-hmm.
on what's happening. But can you talk with us
Mm-hmm.
about what the tool of a ballot initiative is? Because it feels like a great stopgap measure. I
Yeah.
just wish we could get to the part where we don't need it because we're paying enough attention during the actual elections to people's policies. But for the times when we do
Mm-hmm.
need it, and frankly, I shouldn't suggest it that ballot initiatives are only used to help clean up the messes that other people have made
Right.
electorally. There are other ways to use it
Mm-hmm.
as well. But why don't you start by giving us an understanding as to what ballot measures are, how they can be used to either advance rights or in the
Mm-hmm.
opposite direction to retrench them?
Yeah, I mean, so about half the country have what is known as the citizen-led ballot initiative process, and that could be that means you're going into your community, you're gathering signatures to put an issue on the ballot. And we've seen this used on not just abortion, we've seen it on raising the minimum wage, on creating fair districts. I mean, on a plethora of issues. And it started over 120 years ago during the progressive era when corporations, mainly railroad barons, had really taken over our state legislatures, and the
Huh.
people needed a tool to circumvent corporate interests. Does this all sound
I
familiar,
was gonna say
right?
this sounds very
This sounds
familiar,
very familiar.
Chris.
Yeah, so flash forward today, right? Where you think about redistricting and gerrymandering, and even in many states, the districts are drawn in a way that actually is not favorable or fair. And so it has become this tool of necessity, right? Where people are putting these issues that impact their daily life. So you go through that signature gathering process. You got a little more hurdles to clear, but hopefully, right, that all goes well and good, and then that issue is on your ballot, and you get to vote on it. Now, in a state like New York, you don't have the citizen-led process, but your state legislature can refer issues to the ballot, which they did in
Yep.
2024 with Prop 1, right, which was our first of its kind equal rights amendment. So even if you're not in one of those citizen-led states, which is predominantly in the West, and some places in the Midwest and Northeast, not in the formerly enslaved states of the South. There's a
Mm.
reason for that.
Ooh.
I know because you said they don't want Black folks to have power. I mean,
Mm.
like, right? So even this tool has a racist history.
Wow.
The only state that still has it is Florida, and in that state they have a 60% supermajority. So that's essentially what it looks like. But just because you are not in a citizen-led state, and we're seeing this more and more, state legislatures can refer issues to the ballot, which are usually
Mm.
constitutional amendments.
So in a state like Florida, and I'm remembering they also had a
Yeah.
ballot initiative
Yep.
related to abortion rights, and
Yep.
it passed. It didn't pass. It got more than 50% of the vote, but it didn't get.
57%.
It got 57%, and they would have needed 60 in order to protect abortion rights.
60% supermajority. So,
Hmm.
and I think Florida last year, so like 50%, right? That's a win, right? Like
Yeah.
in traditional the way we understand politics, right? But it's that's not even the end of the story in Florida. And when we're talking about rising authoritarianism, you have to look to Florida because
Mm.
every hurdle that they place for this ballot initiative all the way through the process. I mean, Governor DeSantis threatened to shut down TV stations if they aired ads
Wow.
favoring Amendment 4. That's an authoritarian tactic, right? He
Wow.
sent cops to people's home who signed the petition to put the issue on the ballot,
Oh my God.
questioning them of whether they did. So, I know there's so much talk about, what authoritarian looks like at the federal level, but we have so many state level examples, and so like that's so important to the story of Florida. It's like it's not only that supermajority, but it is how the state government, I mean, literally funds from the state government were used against to misinform people. So, you know, it's a really important thing that we need to understand that even if um, we have this tool, that
Yeah.
isn't the end of the story because what we've seen this year after these citizens have
Mm.
voted for these issues, states are trying to overturn exactly what the people
Mm.
voted for.
And the idea is maintaining power at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that ballot initiatives got their start during the robber baron era to me is really
Mm-hmm.
intriguing because I don't think we have been robbed quite the way that we have been robbed in the robber baron era since any time since, except for right now, when we
Exactly.
consider all of the robbing that is happening. And by I mean theft of the services that we have come to
Yep.
rely upon the government for, theft
Yep.
of rights and opportunities, and the idea that Florida is leading the nation in demonstrating what authoritarianism looks like. And considering Florida's leadership is in a whole heap of trouble when it comes to funds and how
Mm-hmm.
they are allocating them in the first place, that was really bold,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
particularly considering you needed a 60% minimum in order to actually pass this legislation into law. That tells me, and I please correct me if I'm wrong or if there's some other way I need to see this, that not only are ballot initiatives seen as a threat to the established power, but that they will do whatever it is that they can in order to prevent the people from actually understanding what is on the ballot and discouraging them. Because if you're going to people's houses who signed the petition to get it on the ballot, that's a level of threat and intimidation that I haven't heard of since the governor of Florida created that fake election police system unit that went getting people who they said weren't supposed to vote who had voted. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's a
Yeah,
bad
no, I
thing.
mean, it's all these things that we have to be aware of. And like, listen, democracy does not work out it cannot exist without us, right?
Mm,
It is, and to what you quoted, right? We, the people, it's us. We are the ones that have to fight for this democracy. And because they know how powerful we are when we come together, that is
mm,
why they are doing all these things. They are trying to consolidate power. They are sending, like the example you just, shared, these fake election police. They're misinforming the public. And, I'm Venezuelan American. So when I see all these
mm.
things happen, I can think of my home country,
Wow.
and it's the same tactics that they use, and democracy fell in Venezuela. And we have,
Wow.
a fascist leader. So we have to be all aware of these things, but we also can't just think, oh, there's nothing we can do. There's absolutely something we can do. The only way to fight this is for us to rise up, and to show that we are much more powerful, united,
Hmm.
to fight what is happening, across the country.
So for people who are in a state where a ballot initiative is a possibility, what
Mhm,
do they need to be considering if they wanted to create a ballot initiative to protect some set of rights? I mean, we pick a right. There's
mhm,
so many of them being snatched. We could pick anyone. Throw a dart at a wall, you'll find a right being snatched. What
mhm,
steps do they need to follow if they're serious about not just
mhm,
getting this initiative on the ballot, also then turning out voters who they may have a lot of agreement in the broader community, but if those agreed persons don't actually make it to the poll site, then that
mhm.
agreement will exist in the ether and not in policy. What does a listener who is thinking about ballot initiatives need to consider when it comes to putting a ballot initiative together and a campaign to get it passed into law?
Yeah, well, first, it's is the coalition of people that you need to talk to, because, part of what we believe at BISC is any of these efforts need to be centered, we have to center the most impacted communities, right?
Mm,
So maybe you want to fight for LGBTQ rights, or, environmental rights. I mean, just think of everything that is happening right now in our
sure.
country when it comes to immigration as well. First, first think about who are the communities that most impacted by that policy you might want, or that ballot measure
Mm,
you might want, and make sure that they are part of the conversation. Like, that is just
mm,
so critically important. Ballot measures are at its core coalition efforts, right?
mm.
Organizations, I think I'm thinking about Florida again, but you think about the coalition that came together for Yes on Four, the reproductive freedom, ballot measure. The labor unions were a part of that coalition.
Wow.
Grassroots, Black and Brown organizations were a part of that. They weren't just traditionally reproductive freedom, or rights organizations that were part of that coalition. So I think that's so critically important. So know, who are the people, who are the communities that you're going to have to move, and make
Mm,
sure that they're a part of your coalition. How are y'all going to make decisions? Like, for us,
mm,
equity has to be at the center of decision making. We think that's so critically important. Thinking about how you're going to, who are the researchers that you're going to need to think about how you're going to message to communities, and obviously, financial resources are critical, and having those early conversations with funders, is also really important, to especially to get that early seed money that we have found is
wow.
so critically important. So, it's not just simply having an idea, but it's really the collection of people that you are going to need to bring together, in order to take on that issue or that fight.